Okay, we are live from Bulgaria, and we're up to Mem Dalid Amud Aleph on the bottom of the Amud. Okay, short Amud. Hopefully, won't be too distracting over here. Here we go. Amarav Yehuda, Amarav, Mita Sheyichada Lemos, a bed which was designated for money. Now, typically a bed is not a thing you would think about for money, but it seems like beds that they had back in the day, sometimes they were used for sleeping and sometimes they were used for other things as well. And so a person goes ahead and designates this bed, basically some form of a surface for holding money. Also, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda, the name of Rav says, it's forbidden to move this bed, even though the money was not placed on it, right? So simply what we call being miyachid, designating something, designation alone is enough to make it muktzah. The Gemara asks the question though, the Gemara asks from Meisvei Nachman bar Yitzchak. Nachman Yitzchak asks from the Mishnah. Mishnah said, "Mataltla ner chadash v'l yashin." You're allowed to move a new candle, but not an old candle. Okay. Uma ner d'lahachi avita. Now we're on the top of Mem Hey Amud Aleph. Sorry, we're learning Ilu Nishmas Mindel Mariam Bas Kam and Ruvain. Mem Dalid Amud Beis, top of the Amud. Uma ner d'lahachi avita. The candle is made for light, right? The candle is made for light. Lo hilik bashari l'taltula. The candle is made; it's designated for light, and yet if a person didn't light it, a ner chadash, a new light, it's mutter l'taltula, right? L'taltula, right? Sorry, lo hilik bashari l'taltula. If a person did not light it, it's permitted. Meaning, even though it's designated to be lit, as long as it wasn't lit, it's mutter. So mita delav lahachi avida, a bed which is not primarily made to hold money. Yes, sometimes you can put money on a bed, but it's not its primary function. Lo kolshkein, for sure, this bed should not become muktzah. So, right? You understand the question? So basically, Gemara is asking, what is this idea of designation? That since you designated it as something which is from muktzah, therefore it's going to be muktzah. We know from the Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about a new candle. A candle, by definition, is designated for lighting, which is something which would make it muktzah. Nonetheless, the Mishnah tells us that it's not muktzah. So why is this bed, which you put money on, or designated it for money, why does it become muktzah? So Gemara says, no, really, let's reread. We misunderstood Rav, we misheard Rav. If you want to teach something from Rav, this is what he said. A bed which was designated for money. This person left money on it. Then you're not allowed to leave it, even on Shabbos. In other words, once you placed money on it, meaning even though you took it off before Shabbos, then that's when it's going to be forbidden to use, because then different ways of understanding it, but one of the ways of understanding it is that now it is something which is significant. It's like a fancy, now it's become like a wallet almost, and that's the way the Rebbeinu Tam understands this. Since you put money in it, even though you took the money out, now it's akin to money in the sense, and therefore it would be forbidden to move. However, lo hiniach amos, if you designated it for money and you didn't put the money on it, mutal tatzla, just like our Mishnah, you'd be allowed to carry it because yichud alone, designation alone is not an issue. Okay, so the Gemara says lo yichud amos. However, if a person did not designate it for money, and Yeshal Amos, it has money on it, right? So now you have a regular bed, which you did not designate for money, and a person put money on it, Asla you're not allowed to move it. Ein Alehamos, right? So if there's money on it, you're not allowed to move it. But Ein Alehamos, but if there is no money on it, Mutzla, that makes sense, right? Because basically in the scenario where it's not designated, then it would depend on whether or not the money was placed on it or not. Okay, Vuhu, Shalo Haya Leha Ben Ashmashos, as long as the money wasn't there Ben Ashmashos. Right? We saw this concept a number of times, and that is Migu. As soon as it's Muktzah Ben Ashmashos, it's going to be Muktzah the entirety of Shabbos. Okay, let's go a little bit further, and here the Gemara is going to discuss money that is on another item and what happens to that other item that's holding money. Amar Ula, Mesiv Rabbi Lazar. Okay, so we just saw this teaching again of Rav, and we're going to ask a question. Rabbi Eliezer asked a question on Rav from another Mishnah Misachas Kalim, that says Muchni Shala. Okay, so basically you have over here a wagon, and the wagon has a wheel. Okay, that's how a wagon works. You have a wagon and it has four wheels. So Bisman Nishmetas, it's a wagon that has wheels that are not like firmly attached, but rather there are wheels that come off. Ein chibur la. It's not considered attached. What does that mean? What that means in this context is that if someone contaminates, let's say the wheel does not transfer the tumah onto the item because they're two separate things. And conversely, if someone goes ahead and contaminates the actual wagon, it doesn't cause the wheels to become tameh because they're two separate things. Okay, there is a discussion in the Gemara over there about measurements, about how big this wagon has to be in order to not be mekabel tumah. If it's very large, it's not mekabel tumah. So the Gemara says that when you measure it to figure out how big it is, the wheels are not counted. Okay, so far this is not yet relevant to our discussion. And there is a notion that once the wagon is big enough that it's able to block things from being an ohel, right? We have this concept of an ohel, that something that is overhanging a mace. Let's say you walk in a cemetery, so you are an ohel, you're being mahil over the mace, and therefore you become tameh. If you have a wagon that's large enough, then it does does not become tamei, and therefore persons on that wagon, it prevents it. However, the wheel that is on the wagon is not considered attached to it, and therefore the wheel, something on top of the wheel, would become tamei. Ve'ein goron osab Shabbos, and here's the key line: Ve'ein goron osab Shabbos b'zman sheyesh aleha mos. You're not allowed to drag the wheel, okay, on Shabbos as long as there is money on it, okay. So, but it's saying that as long as there's money on it, then when on Shabbos itself, right? So, what do you see from here? So, Eliezer infers from here, ha'ein aleha mos. But if there's no money there, sharia afal gav dahavu aleha beinash mashos. Right? The fact that the Mishnah said that if there's money on it on Shabbos, then you're not allowed to move it. The implication is if there was money there when Shabbos began and there's no money now, it'd be mutzar. There'd be no issue. And we just saw, excuse me. We just saw from Rav, he said that as long as there was money there when Shabbos began, then it's going to be Asr. So what's going on? On the one hand, we have this Mishnah, our Mishnah, we have the teaching of Rav who said that if there's money there bein hashmashos, then it stays Asr the entirety of Shabbos, even when the money came off. And yet you have this Mishnah over here which says that as long as there was no money on it when you're moving it, you're allowed to move it, but if there's money there bein hashmashos, you would be allowed to move it, right? So the Gemara says, no, Hahir of Shimon, he deleisle, mukta v'rav, Rav Yehuda svirle. Okay, so once again, this comes back to Rav Shimon and Rav Yehuda, okay? This goes back and back, over and over again, we're going to come back to the machlokas between them. In our Mishnah, yes, in the Mishnah we just read, in the Mishnah Kalim, which said that if the money is not there anymore, even though it was there beinash mashos, that it's mutter, you're allowed to move the wheel, that is talking about, that's going within the opinion of Rav Shimon. And Rav Shimon holds that the fact that there's money there, the fact that something was muksa beinash mashos does not make it muksa for the entirety of Shabbos. However, when Rav taught that if there's money on the bed beinash mashos, it's going to be asr of Shabbos, but Rav Yehuda svirle, Rav holds like Rav Yehuda, and therefore he holds once there's money there beinash mashos, it's going to be asr the entirety of Shabbos, right? You with me? So, not you do not you. So the idea being the entirety of the airport. I want to make sure everyone's with me. Okay, I think there's a lot of Jews here. I just can't tell. Okay, Hachinam Mistavros. The Gemara is going to support this, that Rav holds like Rav Yehuda. How so? De Rav Rav Yehuda Svirle. Damara Manichin Ner Al Gabe Dekel B'Shabbos. Okay, Rav says you're allowed to leave a candle. You're allowed to leave a candle. You're allowed to leave a candle on a tree on Shabbos. And you're not allowed to leave a candle on a tree on Yom Tov. Okay. If you say that Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda, then you can distinguish between Shabbos and Yom Tov. But if he holds like Rav Shimon, Mali Shabbos, Mali Yom Tov, what will be the distinction between Shabbos and Yom Tov? What's going on over here? What's going on over here is as follows. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you would not be allowed, when a candle goes out, you are not allowed to move it. Let's take a step back, actually. There is a not so well-known prohibition, and that is that if something is attached to a tree on Shabbos, you're not allowed to take it off the tree. So, for example, a person's playing Frisbee on Shabbos, and the Frisbee gets stuck in a tree, or even a tall bush, a bush that's more than like about a foot high, not a very tall bush, it gets stuck in that bush, you are not allowed to take it off. Even though it's very easy, you're not moving the tree whatsoever, you're not allowed to do so. Because there's a concern, once I start engaging in that tree, I might go ahead and cut off a branch, and therefore you get your ball stuck in a tree, too bad. You have to leave it there for all of Shabbos. Okay, so Rav Yehuda is, so Rav taught that a person is allowed to hang a candle on a tree on Shabbos. Why does he say that? Because what's going to happen, the candle's going to go out, but we're not concerned that a person's going to go and then take off the candle. Hold on 1 second. We'll keep on going. So, if the candle is there on Shabbos, when the candle goes out, it's still muktzah according to Rav Yehuda. And therefore he says, there's no problem leaving it. Whereas on Yom Tov, where once the candle goes out, there'd be no issue moving it whatsoever, there Rav says, you're not allowed to put the candle on the tree because on Yom Tov there's a concern, I'm going to move it, right? So if he holds like Rav Yehuda, then this distinction between Shabbos and Yom Tov makes sense, because on Yom Tov, since you can move the candle, therefore he says don't put the candle there, because since you would theoretically be able to move the candle, you're going to go and move it off the tree, but there'd be another prohibition of engaging with the tree. Whereas on Shabbos, since the candle's going to be amongst all of Shabbos, there's no problem hanging it there because you're not going to move it when the candle goes out. But if he held like Rav Shimon would say that both on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, once the candle goes out, you'd be allowed to move it. Okay, and therefore it would not make sense to distinguish between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Elamaya must be that Rav holds like Rav Yehuda, and therefore our answer to the question we had before makes a lot of sense. And when Rav taught his halacha that he placed the money on the bed, and he said as long as it's there ben hashmashos, it's going to be asur all of Shabbos, that's because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Whereas the Mishnah in Kalim, which said that if money's there ben hashmashos, it's not going to be asur all of Shabbos, only when the money's there, that goes according to Rav Shimon, and that's because Rav holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Have a wonderful day.